Saint Patrick, the slave who lit a nation with faith. Long ago, when the winds of the Irish Sea carried mist and mystery over emerald hills, and when druids walked the earth chanting to ancient gods, a boy was taken from his home, stripped of his freedom, and thrown into a foreign land. That boy, unknown, frightened, and far from anyone who could help, would one day return, not with vengeance, but with love, and a light that would transform a nation. This is the story of Saint Patrick, the slave who became a shepherd of souls, the outsider who became Ireland's greatest saint, and the man whose legacy continues to echo through time, fields, churches, and every celebration of March 17th. A boy named Maewyn. St. Patrick was not born in Ireland. He wasn't Irish. He wasn't even named Patrick. His birth name was Maewyn Succat, and he was born around 385 AD in Britannia, a Roman province in what is now modern-day Scotland or Wales, depending on which account you follow. His family was well off and Christian. His father, Calpurnius, was a deacon, and his grandfather was a priest. But young Maewyn didn't care much for faith. In his own words, he admitted that he did not know the true God. That would soon change through suffering. The kidnapping. At the age of 16, Maewyn's life was torn apart. Raiders from Ireland, seafaring pirates, descended upon the coast, looting and capturing slaves. Maewyn was taken and sold into bondage in pagan Ireland, a wild and deeply spiritual land ruled by tribal chieftains and guided by druid priests. For 6 long years, he lived as a slave in the cold, green hills of Ireland. He was assigned to tend flocks of sheep in the countryside, alone, often hungry, and always at the mercy of his captors. Yet it was in that solitude and suffering that something awakened. He began to pray. Day and night, he spoke to the God he once ignored. In his autobiography, Confessio, Patrick would later write, "The love of God and the fear of Him grew in me more and more, as did the faith." The escape. One night, after 6 years in captivity, Patrick had a vision, a voice telling him, "Soon you will go home. Your ship is ready." Trusting the vision, he fled his master, traveling 200 miles on foot across hostile territory. Miraculously, he found a ship bound for Britain and convinced the sailors to take him aboard. After a harrowing journey, Patrick made it back to his homeland, free at last. But his story was far from over. The calling. Back home, Patrick reunited with his family and began training in the Christian faith more seriously. He studied in Gaul, modern-day France, possibly under Saint-Germain of Auxerre. He was eventually ordained as a priest and later consecrated as a bishop. Then came a second vision, this time of the Irish people calling out to him in a dream. "We appeal to you, holy servant boy, to come and walk among us again." Patrick knew what he had to do. He would return to the land of his captivity, not to seek justice, but to bring the gospel of Christ. The mission to Ireland. In 432 AD, Bishop Patrick returned to Ireland. But this time, he came not as a slave, but as a missionary. He traveled throughout the island, preaching, baptizing, and building churches. His mission was not easy. Ireland was steeped in paganism and ruled by kings who did not welcome foreign influence. But Patrick was fearless. At Slane Hill, during a royal pagan festival near Tara, the seat of the High King, Patrick lit the Easter fire, directly defying the king's edict that no fire be lit before the king's own. When the king's druids demanded Patrick's execution, he stood his ground. Legend says that when the guards tried to arrest him, he held up his staff and chanted a prayer. The deer's cry, also known as St. Patrick's breastplate. As the soldiers approached, they saw only a deer passing through the woods. Patrick was untouched. Converting a nation. Patrick's knowledge of Irish language and customs gave him a rare advantage. He preached in a way that resonated with the people. He used nature and symbols they understood, most famously the shamrock. The shamrock, a three-leafed plant, became his tool to explain the Holy Trinity: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Three persons, one God. It's said that this simple but profound teaching helped many grasp the Christian mystery in their own cultural terms. Over time, Patrick's influence spread. He traveled from village to village, converting thousands. He baptized princes and commoners alike, often in rivers and wells. He ordained priests and established monasteries, churches, and schools. By the time of his death, much of Ireland had turned from paganism to Christianity. Miracles and legends. Like many saints of old, St. Patrick's life is wrapped in legend. Whether fact or metaphor, these stories reveal the spiritual weight of his legacy. Banishing the snakes. The most famous legend says Patrick drove all the snakes out of Ireland by chasing them into the sea. While historians believe there were never native snakes on the island, the story may symbolize Patrick driving out paganism, often symbolized by serpents. The talking deer. During one journey, Patrick is said to have transformed himself and his companions into a herd of deer to escape an ambush, perhaps another telling of his prayer known as the deer's cry. Raising the dead. Several medieval sources claim Patrick raised people from the dead, sometimes as many as 33 individuals. While these accounts may be hagiographic exaggerations, they reflect the awe his presence inspired. Lighting the fire of faith. More than any one miracle, Patrick's greatest wonder was the transformation of a people. In a few decades, a land once ruled by Druids became a land of saints and scholars. The final days. St. Patrick's mission lasted over 30 years. He tirelessly preached across the island, enduring hardship, hostility, and harsh weather. As an old man, he returned to the site of his first mission, near Downpatrick, in what is now Northern Ireland. He died around March 17th, 461 AD, though some sources suggest as late as 493 AD. He was likely buried in Downpatrick, where a memorial stone today marks the spot traditionally believed to be his grave, shared with fellow saints Brigid and Columba. His writings. Two authentic documents by Patrick survive. Confessio, the Confession, his spiritual autobiography, where he tells the story of his life and mission. Letter to Coroticus, a bold denunciation of British raiders who had enslaved newly baptized Christians. These documents offer rare insight into the heart of a man who saw himself as a humble sinner, yet who boldly took on the task of converting a nation. Patronage and legacy. St. Patrick is the patron saint of Ireland and also of engineers for his legendary skills in church building, Nigeria, which shares a special devotion to him, paralegals, and excluded people, echoing his youth as a captive, against snake bites, and of course, missionaries. His feast day, March 17th, is celebrated around the world, not just in Ireland, but wherever the Irish have journeyed. In New York, Boston, Chicago, Sydney, Buenos Aires, and countless other cities, parades, music, masses, and even rivers dyed green mark the day of the saint who changed a nation. But amid the shamrocks and celebration, It's easy to forget the core of St. Patrick's story. Not leprechauns and beer, but forgiveness, perseverance, and faith. St. Patrick in art and symbol. St. Patrick is often depicted as a bishop in green robes, holding a shamrock or staff, sometimes trampling or banishing snakes, often with a mitre and a golden halo. He is remembered in stained glass, cathedrals, statues, icons, and in countless schools and churches bearing his name. A final word: the shepherd who came back. Patrick's story is not just the tale of a missionary, it's the story of transformation. A teenager stolen into slavery becomes the light-bearer to his captors. A forgotten prisoner becomes a national icon. A humble shepherd becomes a saint of enduring power. He didn't bring violence or conquest. He brought truth through love. He didn't seek revenge. He offered redemption. And he reminds us all that no past is too broken, no pain too great, for God to turn it into purpose. So the next time you see a shamrock, or hear the sound of Irish pipes in the street, remember St. Patrick, the boy who escaped chains and returned to break the chains of others, the man who walked among wolves and left behind a garden of peace. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring tales of saints, legends, and the lives that changed the world one soul at a time. Until next time, may the road rise to meet you.